Writing conditions in PHP comes down to identifying true or false situations. You can do this by using functions and comparative operators, as we've already looked at. We can also use logical operators. This is the final operator type that we're going to be discussing in this section of our course. Using logical operators, we can create more elaborate or more obvious constructs. Besides using logical operators to create more complex conditionals, you can use nesting for this purpose as well. This is the process of placing one control structure inside another. The key to doing this is to place the interior conditional as the statements section of the exterior conditional. Here's an example of what this might look like. As you can see, we've cut down on the complexity of the structures by using extensive indentation and comments. As long as every conditional is syntactically correct, there are no rules to how many levels of nesting you can have, whether you use an else clause or even with a subconditional that's part of the if or the else section of the main conditional. So here I have if condition 1, and then nested inside I have if condition 2, and then I would list my statements for condition 2. Then I have the else, this is the condition 2 else statement, which might have other statements. And then I have the else statement that actually is referring to the original condition, condition 1. When you use PHP, one example of a true condition is simply a variable name that has a value that isn't 0 or an empty string or false. So that could look something like this. Now we've already seen something similar to this by using our OK variable in the script that we've been working on. A condition can also be true if it just simply makes logical sense. So if I change the if statement here and do something like 5 greater than or equal to 3, that's going to return a true value. The condition is going to be false if it refers to a variable and that variable has no value, or a value of 0 or an empty string, or if we've created an illogical construct. So if I just simply change this to be 5 less than or equal to 3, then this condition is always going to be false. And we've already looked at how we can use the exclamation point to make something a not operator. So right here, I can just invert the statement by saying 5 is not equal to 3, and then it's going to return true as well. Here's some more examples of using the exclamation as the not operator, and you can see that we're just, if we set a variable called var and make it equal to a string of value, I say if var, and this would be true. I say if not var, that's going to be false. If we say if is set var, that is true. If we say if is not set var, that's false. Or if var is not empty, that is also true. To go beyond simple one-part conditionals, PHP is going to support 5 more types of logical operators. 2 versions of and. The 2 versions of and are going to be and ampersand ampersand. We also have 2 versions of or, the word or we can use the double pipes. And we also have something called or not, and we write that by writing XOR. So when we have 2 options for one parameter, when we use and or, they differ only in precedence. For almost every situation, you can use either a version of and or either a version of or interchangeably. Using parentheses and logical operators, you can create even more complex if conditionals. Here's 2 examples of more complex conditionals that would resolve to being true. So I could say if, and then you can see I have the wrapping pair of parentheses, and then inside I have other parentheses so that it knows that it needs to perform this logic. So is 5 less than or equal to 3, or is 5 greater than or equal to 3? That is going to be true. And here we have 5 greater than 3 and 5 is less than 10. That's also true. And here are some examples of some false conditionals. You can see here I'm saying is 5 not equal to 5 and 5 is greater than 3. So that would be false because both of those things are not going to be true. And then I have is 5 not equal to 5 or 5 is less than 3. Again, that's going to give us false. So as we construct our conditionals, it's important to remember two things. First, in order for the statements that are the result of the conditional to be executed, the entire conditional must have a true value. Second, by using parentheses, you can ignore rules of precedence to ensure that your operators are addressed in the order of your choosing. So to put this into practice, we're going to go back to our form that we've been working on, and we're going to nest one of the year conditionals inside another conditional. So I'm going to go back into my PHP file. This is the same one that we've been working on the last couple of exercises. And we're going to change our script so that the year validation routine is going to use multiple and nested conditions. And we're also going to ensure that our terms of agreement checkbox should now be validated. So we're going to be changing these two statements and adding some additional ones. I'm just going to cut these from my script. And let's start off by checking to see if the year variable is a 4-digit number. So to do that, I'm going to use my if statement. This condition has two parts. The first part we've already seen. It's going to test for a valid numeric value. The second part is going to get the length of the year variable, and we're using the string length function to do that. And we're going to check to see if the year length value is equal to 4. And because of the and conditional, this statement is going to be true only if both conditions are met. So then what we'll do is we'll create a subconditional to check if the year value is before the current year. This if-else conditional acts as the statement part of the main conditional, and it's going to be executed only if this condition right here is true. Our if-else statement is going to be checking to see whether the year variable is less than 2018. So the user would need to be born before the current year, which is now 2018. If that condition is true, then the user's age is going to be calculated the same way that we did it before. Otherwise, we're going to print out our error message, and we're going to set our OK variable to false, indicating that a problem has occurred. So this new condition that we're writing is the opposite of the previous version. We're verifying that the value is less than some number instead of greater than or equal to that number as we did before. And now we just need to complete the main year conditional. So we'll add an else statement on here. And this is going to be the else for the first conditional. This is going to just print our message that they need to enter the year that they were born using 4 digits. So let's save our page and make sure that this works in the way that we would expect it to. Here's my page. I'm going to fill out some information here. And if I don't put a year value and I just click send it, you can see that we're going to get our error message. So that's working correctly. If I put a year value in there that is higher than the current year and I click send, we're going to get our error message. Now we're also getting a undefined variable for age on line 49. And the reason that that's happening is because at this point our conditional is skipping over this if statement. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to get rid of this line for right now. So once I do that, we're just going to get the statement that just lets the user know that they made a mistake and we need them to check on their birth year. So if I go back to my form and we change this to something that meets our criteria and we click submit, then we get our successful result. So this is now working in the way that we would expect it to. And so if we want to add in our message telling the user how old they are, we would just need to move that print statement to this if statement right here. So underneath here, I'm just going to add my you are however many years old. And if we refresh now and we go back to our form and fill it out with the same information and click send it, it now says that they are 2 years old and we get our successful registration message. And the final thing that we're going to add to our code right now is that we want to confirm that the terms checkbox was not ignored. So we want to make sure that they agree to our terms. To do that, we're going to add in another line of code. So in order to validate that the terms checkbox was actually checked, we're going to use another if statement, and we'll use inside of the parentheses our not is set function, and then we'll just pass on that we want to retrieve the information from our form, and we're going to be looking for the terms information right now. So if our terms variable has not been set, then the user is going to fail to select the box and the error is going to be reported, and that should work. I did just notice that earlier when we set our OK variable, I was inconsistent in the use of OK, so I'll need to change that so that OK is properly formatted. Let's save this and we'll test it in the browser. I'm going to hit refresh. I'll fill out the fields with some information. And if I try to submit the form without clicking my terms, you see that I get an error. So if I go back, now I can complete the form and I'll need to check the checkbox, and then I can click send, and then it will successfully parse our form. So now you can see we've improved upon our form and it is checking the data that we want. It's common that in long, complicated conditionals, you might forget to put an opening or closing parenthesis or a brace, which is going to produce an error message or produce unexpected results. So I would recommend that you find a system, like you space out your conditionals by using comments to help you clarify your code. Or if you just create the entire conditional structure first and then go back in and fill in with your statements, that's going to be helpful because then you won't accidentally forget one of your parentheses or curly braces that you might need. Another tip that you might want to do is if you have problems getting your if-else statements to execute, you might want to print out the values of the variables to help debug the problem. A conditional may not be true or false because a variable doesn't have the value you think it does. So that could be a helpful way that you can debug.